So today I wanted to come on here and talk about why and when you should overhaul a athlete's program. There's a couple key points here, but first off, I wanted to shout out the person who gave me the idea for this, Alex Tran PL. Y'all may know him on Instagram at Alex Tran PL, but he made an informational post about this same exact topic, which kind of inspired me to um, go ahead and create this and add a case study for my own athlete for reasonings similar and slightly different than his. But to get right into the topic, for a couple key points of why I personally think, in just a short little list of things that I think about and what I look at whenever I'm about to or considering overhauling the program for an athlete, are number one, when things are just no longer working, they're becoming flat. Progress is kind of hard to come by, despite making slight changes in the programming to accommodate the athlete and things of that nature. And whenever that current structure may not fit their work schedule anymore, work schedule, school schedule, or life schedule, life happens, right? So a few different things may come up. You may get another job, you may get a new schedule for a job, and you may not be able to train on the same day as you did before. So that's another big reason why uh, overhauling the program is a good option. And then after making a couple adjustments to the current layout, right? So whenever we tried everything with our old microcycle and layout, you've made adjustments to each day to try to have that primary day feeling as strong as possible, and just things just aren't completely working anymore, then maybe it's time to consider making a complete overhaul for the athlete, changing up the program to fit maybe their needs or fit things that may help them feel stronger and be stronger in the long run. But today I'm going to do a case study over my athlete Sebastian. So to get into his specific reasonings of why I programmed him, we'll go into the next slide. So for Sebastian's program in itself, with his old microcycle and programming itself, this was his old weekly layout. We'd have that Monday secondary squat, Monday secondary bench, Tuesday tertiary bench with secondary deadlift, rest Wednesday, rest Sunday, and rest Saturday. You come in Thursday with the primary squat, and then Friday you'll have primary bench and primary deadlift. This gave us a lot of good results. This yielded a lot of positive for, I'd say, probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Now, this was also prior to him having one job. Now he has two jobs, which is a big life change. A lot of stress, a lot of factors go into that. But with this being here, this gave us a good long period of time, just under a year, of positive results and getting stronger each and every block. With this, we decided for about 2 blocks that we wanted to keep the same layout with and just try to make things work whenever things picked up with the second job, and then that kind of came down to a lot of issues, right? So number one, obviously, he got the new work schedule. He was working more hours. Things were getting harder for him outside of the gym, which made training a little bit less optimal. In a sense, a lot of recovery issues arose, right? Because you have a second job and things of that nature, you're not going to be able to recover as well, especially because he has a super physical and active job. So what we tried to do previously before switching to the new microcycle was, one, pull back on some intensity and volume within these days. So previously, what we try to do is take out an extra set for secondary squat going to the primary squat, and then lower the intensity and volume that day to help recovery feel a little bit better. But he still came in a little bit more beat up just due to extra work and then a little bit less sleep. And then same thing with the deadlift here. And then bench was the one lift that didn't take much of a hit, so we knew that we could keep this the same. But what we had to do is, after resulting in no progress and kind of flatlining after doing adjustments to squat and deadlift, we talked to each other, we communicated, we're like, okay, let's see if we can add more rest days between days, because this old microcycle is also super compact, right? You have the primary squat, and then the next day you have your primary bench and deadlift. You don't get much rest between your primary days, which resulted in a lot more excess fatigue going into Friday from Thursday, since the recovery wasn't as optimal as prior. So what we decided to do was rehaul the program, right? After one or two blocks of things not progressing. What we talked about, we knew in the past that the 2 day exposure for primary squat was the most optimal thing for Sebastian. We have tried 3 days exposure and he just doesn't come in feeling strong. So we knew for a fact that closing that gap, having 2 days between primary and secondary squat, was the thing we needed. So we decided to change days to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So we kept the secondary squat on Friday, or we didn't keep it, we changed it to Friday. We have that Saturday, Sunday rest going into primary squat to keep that exposure timing. And with the same story kind of with deadlift here as well, right? We knew coming in here we needed 2 days exposure for the deadlift. We were considering teetering around with the 3 day exposure just to mitigate days doing multiple leg movements at the same time, but we ultimately came down to this. Plus, this layout also gave you a full rest day, which is that Sunday, between primary squat and primary deadlift. Our initial thoughts were, okay, will a heavy deadlift come in and affect our primary squat, even with the rest day Sunday being there? That was kind of our biggest concern there, but as of right now, things are panning out extremely well. The biggest thing we had to adjust was bench, right? So we kept the 2 day exposure as well from the tertiary bench to the primary bench. A lot of times I will use this tertiary or quaternary bench to help prime that athlete going into this primary bench session. But we wanted to teeter around with having this primary bench session the same exposure timing. With this layout as well, this gives us the opportunity to maybe possibly in the future move this primary bench session into Friday to have 1 day exposure and then add a fourth bench day if needed. But for now, we are yielding positive results with the maintained exposure timing there. But what is different is the secondary bench and tertiary bench. Now there's one full rest day here, which kind of benefited us in the long run, right? With this prior secondary bench and tertiary bench being back-to-back days, I wasn't necessarily able to push this tertiary bench threshold a little bit more, just because the overall fatigue buildup from benching back-to-back days was a little bit higher. So with that being said, I was able to push the top end load for this tertiary bench slightly more, because he'd feel a little bit more refreshed and less fatigued going into this day, which ultimately helped us put more load on that primer day to feel a little bit stronger on this primary bench day. Also allowing us to push a secondary bench day a little bit harder, since we knew we had a rest day before the tertiary bench day. So, like I was saying, the old microcycle is here, and we switched to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday microcycle with the programming. And we decided this so far has been yielding positive results the past few blocks. To dig a little bit deeper with the old microcycle and programming as well, what we had on the secondary squat day was a little bit more of a pause squat variation for the whole day and pause or tempo squats on the day. So we knew he came in a little bit weaker on this day because bar felt heavy on his back but felt good on his legs. So we decided to implement a competition squat top set on this day to increase load, to have a little bit more intensity on his back. And we kind of kept the same principles on this new program as well. Kind of the same thing here. But to get into his actual program itself, what the program looks like I was saying, we have the primary squat day going into that Monday session, and then the Friday session will be down here. Well, what we decided to do is keep the tempo squat, but kind of delegate and push out the pause squat slightly on this day, just because we have the tempo squat to reinforce technique there, and we now have a little bit of a intensity pushing this on this day to feel stronger and have the bar feel better on our back coming onto Monday. What we did is have 2 ascending sets of competition squat with back downs of tempo squat here to keep the bar a little bit heavier, keep the load a little bit heavier on the bar on this Friday to come into this Monday session. But this has so far been yielding good results. We have been feeling a lot stronger, a lot more poppy out of the hole. The bar's been feeling a lot better on our back. Everything so far for squat has been phenomenal. We also just hit a recent rep PR for squat as well. And then with bench as well, like I mentioned, we were able to push the threshold on the secondary and tertiary bench day a little bit higher. So previously, what we would have, this is a little bit newer, but previously we would have just kind of a 1 by 3 to 5 top set, and then two back downs of 5 or 6, just to keep the volume high and the load a little bit low to mitigate fatigue going to that Tuesday tertiary bench session. But here now, I have decided to up the intensity a little bit. On this day, there's no specific range, just to adjust to some pain we've been having recently. But right now, we I would tend to put a specific range here with a little bit higher intensity on the 2 by 3, and Spoto is here for a variation just due to a little bit of dumping that happens on Sebastian's bench. But with this being pushed a little bit harder, we have been able to get more load in our hands, feel stronger, and obviously get stronger just due to pushing a little bit heavier weight. And then with the Wednesday, tertiary bench session, what I have decided to do for Sebastian, we knew that coming into that primary bench session, the bar feels heavy in his hands. So prior, what we'd have a tempo 2 by 1 at a specific range and RPE, but what I had biased for other people, but didn't necessarily work when we tried it with Sebastian, it was a 3 by 1. What I decided to do was have a 2 by 1 with the same load and then minus 10 pounds on another single. And this so far has been making him feel phenomenal. Weight feels great in his hands. Technique is super clean just with the extra tempo set, and things have been super phenomenal. And then previously we would have this be sets of 7 or 8 just because we needed to pull back on a load a little bit to mitigate excess fatigue buildup. But now that the days are a little bit more spread out, we have able to lower this to sets of 5 with a little bit more of a smaller percentage drop off to feel good and push, like I keep saying, the intensity and load on the day. And coming into the primary bench day, things have been blowing up phenomenally. A lot of the times I have a single for a lot of my athletes, and with Sebastian feeling as strong as possible, this is the beginning of the macro, so we're going to be pushing around 325 with his best being 330, 335. So I think we are going to keep building up from here. Things have been looking up phenomenally as well. And we were able to match the PR as well with the last block. And with deadlift as well, due to the secondary deadlift being here and the same thing being here, we didn't have to adjust the secondary deadlift very much at all, right? We kind of just teetered around with technique work and then competition deadlift as well, just to get some practice in. So we kind of kept the secondary deadlift programming the exact same. We have a comp deadlift top set with 2 ascending deadlift back offs and barbell RDLs. Like I said, this hasn't changed much just due to the nature of the overhaul. Things didn't need to change much for deadlift when it came to a programming sense. What we have done in recent is just keep adjusting this rep range for the pause and comp sets with adjusting these load ranges as well, because we know kind of what we need to feel on that secondary day to feel strong on the primary day. Our biggest consideration that I mentioned prior as well was this primary deadlift Saturday going to affect the primary squat Mondays? And like I said prior, it wasn't too big of a deal due to the fact that we had that full rest day now, so things were able to recover. He was able to feel stronger and feel a little more fresh coming into Mondays. But what we did initially, we had 5 sets of competition deadlift on the day, and when we first made the change, we changed it to 4 sets, and we're still going to keep running 4 sets for now, just because things are progressing in a positive attitude. So with one less set, he is feeling a little bit more fresh coming into each day, and this is still yielding positive results. We just recently hit 500 on deadlift again ever since our meet. Things have been moving extremely fast. We are probably at one of the strongest we've ever been for all 3 lifts, which is super exciting. But that's kind of the biggest reasoning for the programming overhaul. And to get into a little bit more detail, like I was saying, prior to changing to this new microcycle, Before, with the old microcycle, we kind of peaked out at a certain number and then things started regressing a little bit. We weren't able to hit 500 on deadlifts for a couple months or a couple blocks. But now, after the first change, after the first block of changes, I should say, things have been looking up phenomenally for all three lifts, which is super exciting. But that's about everything. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, which will be my first and last name dot lifts, or you can comment down below